Hello everyone, Ben Church here from Ben's Chem Videos. Hope you're having an awesome day. So I've decided to veer off from my normal routine of talking about chemistry to take the plunge and dive right into vlogging. So for those of you who are internet impaired, that means video weblogging. And today I wanted to talk about public education in America. So right now, as I'm recording this video, it says on my YouTube channel page that I am a high school chemistry teacher. And shortly after I upload this video, I'm going to change my YouTube channel page because I am no longer a high school chemistry teacher. That's right. I left the profession. I thrust myself into that infamous 50% statistic of teachers who leave the profession within the first 5 years of employment. So why did I leave? And more importantly, why did the rest of these 50% leave? Why did we leave? So as you may have guessed, that's what we're going to talk about. Why so many of these teachers leave? What is the reason for teacher attrition? So it's important for me to clarify that I'm going to be approaching this from two perspectives. I'm going to be talking about the anecdotal perspective, which is just my own personal anecdotes, my own stories that do not necessarily reflect the system as a whole. Although, I've talked to a lot of teachers and they all have very similar experiences. So, if you get enough anecdotes together, now all of a sudden you have empirical evidence. But, it's not published, it's not peer reviewed, so it's still anecdotal evidence, right? Take it however you want it. Then there's the empirical evidence, which is some nationwide statistics that I'm going to point out. And of course I will provide links down there in the description for you to check those out and read them at your own leisure and digest them and just form your own opinion on these facts, right? So now I'm going to go ahead and share my story with you. So I taught in an inner city public school. The student body was about a little over 90% black. Over 90% of the student body was below the poverty line, and all of the students received, in the entire school, every single student does not pay for breakfast or lunch. So subsidized breakfast, subsidized lunch, all across the board for every student in this school. Now, so you can probably already imagine that this is a pretty rough part of town. Not necessarily because of the race, but because of the poverty, right? And all the theft, all the violence, the child neglect, the drug abuse, the prostitution that tends to accompany poverty. Now, out of respect for my former colleagues, teachers, administrators, and whomever else, I will not identify the school, nor will I identify the school district. I could get into some more precise statistics of what percentage are Asian or Hispanic or there's a lot of them from Haiti. I'm not gonna get into those exact figures because I'm afraid that would only help to identify the school, which I do not want to happen. I want them to remain anonymous as possible throughout this video. So before we go any further, please understand that whatever I say in this video is not directed at any one particular individual. I'm not trying to throw anybody under the bus here. We really need to understand that the problems that are associated with education, they cannot directly be attributed to any one individual, nor can they be attributed to a small group of individuals, right? People who work in education, whether they are teachers, instructional coaches, counselors, assistant principals, district personnel, even superintendents. All of these people are simply just taking orders from their superiors, right? So there's a saying that goes, I'm a man who sits behind a desk. I take my orders from a man who sits behind a bigger desk, right? And so that really encompasses education, right? So because of this bureaucratic entanglement, it is very difficult to place blame on anybody. It's not his fault, he's just doing what he's being told. Oh, what about that guy? It's not his fault. He's just doing what he's being told, right? So because of that bureaucratic entanglement, not only is it hard to blame anyone, but as a result, it's hard to really solve any of the problems in this giant, intricate system. So before I get into the problems that I faced and the problems that sort of plague the system as a whole, I would be extremely remiss if I didn't tell you that there is a lot of good that goes on in public education, even to this day, right? So somewhere out there is a teacher tutoring a student long after her contract allows her to leave campus. Somewhere out there's a teacher spending his own money on a student who cannot afford supplies. Even at my old school, I mean, there was a lot of this kind of thing going on, right? So there was a gentleman who sacrificed, a good portion of the space in his room to collect coats from charitable donors so that kids who did not own a coat could get one for free so that they could get warm in the wintertime. Now, I live in Florida, so that doesn't happen very often, but occasionally, we have a little bit of jacket weather every now and then, and it appears to be very unpredictable. Like all of a sudden, it's like, oh my goodness, it's cold. Where did that come from? Very unpredictable when it comes to the wintertime. So, and also, once upon a time, there used to be a teacher who at one point was giving a very, a warm hug to a young lady who was about to go into foster care and whose own mother told her to her face that she doesn't want her daughter in her life anymore. I mean, it's just brutal things, And that teacher was me. So what do all these nice, kind, and charitable things have in common? Well, they are the result of voluntary actions, not compulsory actions. In other words, people are, these educational professionals, teachers, whoever, they are doing these good things for these children because they want to. I mean, that's kind of why we get into this gig in the first place. Like, nobody forces us to become teachers. We do it because we want to become teachers, and we want to become teachers for all the right reasons. We want to help children, we want to educate them, we want to empower them, and we want to improve the present and future of our society. Nobody is forced to do these things. We do them on our own volition, right? So we want to make the world a better place, even if that means sacrificing time, energy, money, power, sleep, sanity, and overall good health. Now, there are some compulsory things that benefit the children, like the fact that they get subsidized breakfast, subsidized lunch. Kids who are visually impaired can get a subsidized pair of corrective lenses so they can read properly. But these things are paid for with dirty money. I mean, think about it. If I robbed you at gunpoint while you were trying to withdraw money from an ATM and I took $300 out of your account, and then I kept a large portion of it for myself, invested another large portion to ensure that I could commit subsequent robberies, and then donated $1 of it to the United Way, well, you wouldn't exactly be in a huge hurry to call me a philanthropist, would you? Because I'm not, I'm a crook, right? So it's dirty money. But it is resulting in some good things on a very local level, but not for the society as a whole. So, I mean, I'm kind of going off topic a little bit, but the central theme that I'm putting forth is that kindness in education is voluntary, not forced. So this means that most teachers, when left alone, are going to have a positive impact on their students. However, I found out very, very shortly after being hired on as a public school teacher that teachers today, at least in my school, in my district, are anything but left alone. I mean, you are told what to do in every single way imaginable. I mean, whether you're a good teacher or a bad teacher, they don't discriminate. They tell all of them exactly what to do. What do they tell them to do? Well, you are told, and again, you being the teacher, you are told what to have on your whiteboard at the front of the room every day. You are told how to carry out your instruction. You are told to use the most advanced technology available, even when sometimes it might be detrimental to learning. You are told how much or how little homework to assign to your students. You are told what grading scale to use. You are told the exact weight of each assignment. So in other words, tests are worth X%, homework is worth Y%, and so on. You are told, in some cases, how to arrange the desks in your room. So they don't come out and tell you how to arrange the desks. It's just you kind of do what you want to do, and then if they don't like it, then they come in and tell you to change, right? Change your desks, right? You are even given a template by which you must format your lesson plans. So these aren't like tips or suggestions, these are non-negotiables. And again, they literally use that term, non-negotiables, and they use it quite unapologetically, like, right? I mean, it's like, no big deal, you know, these are non-negotiables, it's just par for the course with education nowadays, so, you know, you can't negotiate it, so you're going to do it, right? Okay, we're good. So not only do I find this disturbing, you know, that teachers are not being treated as responsible, educated professionals who are capable of making these decisions on their own, but I'm also puzzled by it. And the thing that I find puzzling and kind of fascinating at the same time is that, you know, think about this, right? So we are in an age where diversity is king, right? Diversity is always looked at as this wonderful, awesome thing. Biodiversity is awesome. Cultural, ethnic, socioeconomic diversity, right? Having people of all different backgrounds coming together and learning from one another is considered a great thing. Now, if diversity is so awesome, then how come there's such a big push for uniformity among teachers? I mean, this system is literally forcing French teachers to use the same exact teaching techniques as math teachers. And I don't know about you, and this is just my personal humble opinion, but in my opinion, when a student walks into a French class, that student should get a completely different experience than the experience he or she gets when he or she walks into a math class, right? They shouldn't be the same. They should be different. They're two different subjects. They should be taught in different ways, right? So this system is sort of like, you know, sucking the variety out of a kid's school day, right? He goes to 6 or 7 different, I mean, it depends on the kind of schedule, whether it's like traditional or block schedule or whatever, but I'll just give you an example of my school. My school had 7 periods, 7 classes a day. So if a child walks into 7 different classrooms and sees all the teachers doing the same stuff, having the same stuff on their board, using the same exact techniques, you know, how could that possibly result in a quality education? It can't, right? So a lot of the research that's done in these techniques is very like small sample, right? They'll study one class, right? And they'll do this technique on one class, and then that particular class will improve on this research-based, you know, technique, but they don't really like multiply it. They don't, you know, they think that just because you do it for one class, that means you can do it for like all of the kids' classes, and then, you know, that it's going to be better. But like, you know, there is, you know, too much of a good thing, even if it is good, which I don't think most of these things are good, but too much of a good thing can be bad, right? So, all right, so what are some of the examples? I'll give you one very detailed example of a strategy that teachers in this school district, and I think the entire state of Florida, I live in Florida, have to employ in their lessons, okay? So in my former district, teachers are required to collect data and track the progress of their students using something called a learning scale or a learning goal scale, or simply just scale, right? So these scales are so infamous and ubiquitous in these schools that when you hear the word scale, you know what the other person is talking about, right? You know they're not talking about the thing in the bathroom or the thing in the, you know, at the doctor's office. You know they're not talking about the thing that's on the side of a fish. You know that they're talking about the learning scale. So what is the learning scale, for those of you who don't know? Well, the scale is, has integer values from 0 to 4, okay? And each of these numbers sort of represents like a category, you know, a certain level of content mastery, right? So in other words, if you are a 0 on the scale, that means that you know jack squat about the subject. If you're a 4, well then you know it so well that you could teach it to a blind gorilla in your sleep with your hands tied behind your back. Now, the idea behind the implementation of the scale does have a little bit of merit. I mean, here's the rationale for a learning scale. The idea is most likely your class is very diverse in terms of how intelligent they are and how quickly they can digest content, right? And so the learning scale is a method by which teachers can sort of streamline data monitoring, right? So they can monitor the progress of their students every day, every lesson, using this technique. Now, odds are your class is probably, if you're a teacher, your classes are probably already too big to begin with, right? So maybe that's a way that we could streamline data collection. Reducing class size? Wow, what a far-flung idea, right? Anyway, So now let's get to the fun part, the implementation of the learning scale. So here's how it goes, right? Before the lesson begins, you project the scale for that lesson on the board in front of the room for all the students to see. Then you ask the students to read it, to digest it, and to rate themselves on the scale. So what do you think you are right now? Do you think you're a 0, 1, 2, 3, or 4? And so they write down their ratings on a sticky note or a small scrap of paper, something small, right? And so that's what they know about the content before the lesson. Then you teach them the lesson. And as you're teaching the lesson, you have to keep a very close eye on the clock. You can't just lose yourself in the content, right? Because what you have to do is you have to leave enough time at the end of class for the students to rate themselves on the scale a second time, right? So even if you're in the middle of a very stimulating, thought-provoking discussion, it doesn't matter. You got to cut that discussion off and make sure that those kids can rate themselves on the scale a second time, right? Okay, so they rate themselves a second time, and then when the bell rings, as the students exit, they all drop their little papers into a shoebox or something. And so if you teach 6 classes like I did, you'll have 6 shoeboxes with about 170 sticky notes between them. So, of course, then you got to pull out some time out of where to analyze and interpret all of this data that you just got for that day. So a day's worth of data, you have like 170 sticky notes, and you're just kind of peeling them off of one another and arranging them and trying to sort them into categories and to make sense of all of these data. And by the way, the data shows how well the students think they know the content, not how well they actually know it, right? If you want to find out how much they actually know, well, you have to quiz them or you have to test them, right? So with this scale, hooray, aha, we now have real, scientific, numerical, empirical evidence suggesting that students think they know content better after a lesson is taught than they think they know the content better before the lesson is taught, right? So we've just proven that students know things better after a lesson than before the lesson. Wow! Bravo, public education system. I mean, you guys, you're really onto something there. I mean, I would have not guessed that. I mean, I would have never guessed that people know stuff better after you teach it to them. I mean, wow. I mean, this isn't like a Captain Obvious moment. This is like Admiral Obvious or General Obvious. I mean, this is Commander-in-Chief Obvious. Okay? Now, as far as collecting the data and all that, I mean, these things, you can save time by implementing technology. Like you can use clickers or tablets or stuff to, sort of speed up the data collection so you're not messing with 170 sticky notes. But in my opinion, it's still a big waste of time. I mean, the use of a scale, I could see it helping a teacher who would have otherwise just, popped in a DVD and showed videos to his students all day, every day, right? The scale is probably going to help him and his students are probably going to improve. But for someone who is already, passionate and motivated and they love their content and they really want the kids to do well, the scale is a massive hindrance to their progress. Trust me. I mean, I've talked to so many wonderful, just gifted, hardworking, talented teachers about that, and we all agree. But whatever. Okay, so I've talked ad nauseum about what teachers are forced to do. I gave you that very specific example with that learning scale. But how exactly are they forced to do it? Do they have a gun to their head? Well, that's a little extreme. No, they don't have a gun to their head. But going against the grain of public education will cost you points on your evaluation if you're a teacher. And these evaluations are permanent and they are accumulative. So not only are they with you forever, but they kind of build off of each other, right? The evaluation from your first year goes into your overall evaluation, by the time you reach your 20th year. At least that's how the system currently works. And these evaluations also determine how much of a raise you're going to get, if you get any raise at all. Usually you do. I think, I might be incorrect about that. I think you always get a raise with every subsequent year. I don't know. I'm not sure. I never really focused on money that much, but what I'm trying to say is the evaluation determines how much you'll get paid, right? So if you do things your own unique way, then you're already you're already terrible, abysmal lifetime earning potential is going to take a hit just by doing things your own unique way and not doing what they're spoon feeding you. So now the nice thing about this is that luckily a large portion of your evaluation comes from something called a formal observation, right? So that's when your supervising administrator, your direct boss, usually an assistant principal, will come into your classroom and observe you throughout the entirety of the class period. And the nice thing is you get to schedule this, right? So you get to schedule the date within a certain window and the time within a certain window. Just depends on how available the assistant principal is, right? So pretty much, you get to choose the day and you get to choose the time, which means you get to choose your best, most intelligent, best behaved class, right? So, and you get to prepare accordingly, like you can see it coming, okay? And for most teachers, preparing means bribing the students. It means, bribing them with candy or with extra credit or something. You're like, hey, you make me look good, then you're gonna get some Reese's Pieces, Johnny. So it's kind of like that, that Golden Corral story here in Florida where, when they got wind of a health inspector visit, and as a result they took all the expired food and just brought it out to the dumpsters and just hid it right near the dumpsters where it would just collect flies and all that stuff. It was disgusting, right? And then of course when the health inspector leaves, what are they going to do? Well, they're going to wheel that food back into the restaurant, just flick the maggots off of it, and then serve it to their paying customers. So this is, these formal observations, they don't really have a whole lot of validity because they're announced, right? But in addition to the formal observations, there are unannounced visits from your boss, right? So they'll barge right in, they'll put you under the microscope, which for me, I always kind of panic. Even if they're not there to observe me, I always get kind of like, oh man, there's another adult in the room. I just kind of feel weird. It's just kind of an anxiety that comes out about the whole thing. It just kind of puts you on edge. At least it puts me on edge. I mean, I don't know. Some other teachers are okay with it, but me, I always felt uncomfortable. I would just subconsciously, trip over words. I would stutter. I wasn't really giving it 100%, or I was psyching myself out when another adult would walk in the room. Anyway, they have their checklist. They want to make sure not only that the kids are learning, but that the kids are learning because you're doing this, this, and this, right? Now, here is a shocking revelation. I mean, this is about to just blow the roof off of your house. If a technique has to be forced upon a motivated, smart, educated, responsible teacher, if that technique has to be forced, then it's not a good technique. It's kind of a clue that this is garbage, right? I mean, here's an example. Do I have to force you to eat pizza? Hell no. Because pizza is awesome, right? You're going to make that choice on your own. I mean, the sheer fact that teachers are forced to do these things, I mean, these things are just, most of these techniques are just balderdash, basically. I mean, now, to be fair, some of them are actually sensible, okay? So for instance, it's a good idea to have a clearly defined goal, clearly define what you want the students to be able to accomplish after the lesson, right? But guess what? This is commander-in-chief obvious. Good teachers already know this. They don't need instructional coaches, which we'll get to them later. They're pulling these good teachers out of their classrooms to tell them, stuff that's either obvious or dumb and counterproductive and destructive to their kids. And these meetings that take away the precious planning time of a good teacher, they are a joke. They're a joke. How are they a joke? Well, the reason why they're a joke is because they are conducted in the same way by which you are supposed to give your lessons. So what do I mean by that? Well, in a meeting, and mind you, this is a meeting with a room full of adult human beings, there's a scale on the board, and we adults, we have to rate ourselves on the scale before the meeting, and then rate ourselves on the scale after the meeting, and then blah, 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 blah. What am I, a child? Why can't you just tell me what the meeting is about? Say, okay, any questions? No? All right then, you are dismissed. You can go back to your room and start, you can resume doing the things that actually matter for your students, okay? Gosh. And the people that conduct these meetings, okay, they're called instructional coaches, right? And their job is to teach teachers how to teach. okay? And these aren't people that are delocalized off in the district office, right? They are in school. School is where they go to work every day. Their job is to tell teachers how to do their jobs, right? Because, you know, the 4-year education degree that you may have earned as a teacher, not enough, right? It's not enough. I mean, now in my case, I don't have an education degree. I have a chemistry degree. And that requires, to be a teacher, you know, you can get hired immediately because, especially with science teachers, there's just such a high demand. They'll just take anybody with a science degree who seems like they'd be good at the job. And then that's, you know, you agree under the assumption that within, I think, 3 years, you know, you're going to complete these 15 credit hours along of education classes, along with, you know, professional development, you know, points, and there's a point system, and I don't even want to get into all that. But it's like, is your education and experience not enough? Like, I guess it's not, right? We have to just have these instructional coaches, people who teach teachers how to teach. I mean, what's next? Are we going to have instructional coaches? Are we going to have people who teach teachers how to teach teachers how to teach? I mean, you know, there's nothing funny about this system, but like, sometimes to keep your sanity, you just gotta laugh. You know, I mean, the system is just is very like flawed. But sometimes, you know, the only therapy is laughter. And you know, if you have any friends who are teachers, like if you're not a teacher but you have friends who are teachers, you might be thinking like, man, these teachers, they just complain all the time and blah blah. And like, well, you know, they kind of need that. They kind of need their therapy. And though it might be annoying to hear a teacher just go on and on about his or her job, like, pretty much all the things that they're saying, you know, they're really bothering them. And so if they didn't get it off of their chest, they would implode, right? So just, you know, the best thing you can do is just kind of put up with it, and, you know, I guess try your best to change the subject, but without being rude, right? It's never a good idea to be rude to anybody in any particular instance, right? So here's a great idea, right? So like, why don't we take these instructional coaches and just put them back into the classrooms where they used to be, and where many of them are very effective. Like, you know, don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to insult instructional coaches as people. You know, I had 2 main coaches. I had a science coach and I had a first-year coach, right? And both of them were very nice, very hardworking, just wonderful people, okay? But I'm going to be honest, I got to be honest here, like, their job titles, they didn't always exist, and they weren't always necessary, and they're not necessary today, so they shouldn't exist today. Put these people back into the classrooms, they have experience, and at least that'll help reduce these god-awful class sizes. I mean, it's just a mess, people. It's a mess. Instructional coaches, oh my goodness. Anyway, let's move on. So we've talked a lot about the policies that teachers are expected to follow. Now let's switch gears and talk about something that influences the children usually more than their time spent in school, and that is their home lives, right? So there's a famous paper that was released by Dr. Betty Hart and Dr. Todd Risley, and according to this paper, children who are in families that receive government assistance, so like, you know, food stamps and Section 8 housing and stuff like that, children of these families hear an average of 30 million fewer words than middle to upper class children by the age of 3. And no, I did not just stutter. There is a 30 million word gap between among 3-year-olds between those receiving government assistance and those who aren't, right? So it's like a lot of the damage has been done to these children long before they set foot on that elementary school campus for the first time. I mean, a lot of the factors that determine ultimately whether a child will be an academic success or an academic failure, they occur very early on in childhood, and they are, I wouldn't say irreversible, but they are, you know, it's a very hard uphill battle, right? Especially for the teacher, right? You know, a teacher is trying to have one class where you have students who are 30 million words apart from one another, or more by the age of 5, right? So it's a very, very challenging task, is to teach kids who are just on opposite ends of the spectrum in terms of their intelligence and their comprehension and everything else. It is very difficult. Good luck good luck, teachers. You have a truly difficult job. Even in high school, parenting is still like the dominant factor in a child's academic success. At least that's what I think. I mean, I don't have any empirical evidence to suggest that, but it seems to me like since children are, they see their parents more, I mean, hopefully, like they're at home more often than they're at school, right? So, and their parents really have more control over them. So the parent has the power to say, hey, you got to be home by this day, let me see your homework. And, they can call the school and say, hey, I want to know how he's doing. They can arrange conferences. Like, parents have much more power than teachers. And we're going to talk about how much power teachers have in a moment, right? But, parents, the parental aspect of it cannot be understated, right? Parents have way more influence or way more potential to influence their children than their teachers do. I mean, I think we can all agree upon that, right? Nevertheless, teachers are evaluated and paid based on their students' standardized test scores. So, and that's, of course, in addition to the observations which were previously mentioned in this video. And, it's literally like putting a gardener in a pitch black room with no sunlight and say, hey, you got plenty of water. How come your seeds aren't growing into plants? Well, it's because you got no sunlight. And just as a plant needs both water and sunlight, a kid needs good parents and good teachers, right? I mean, a kid might sort of get by with a good parent and bad teachers, or good teachers and a bad parent, but it's very difficult, and good parents are important because, the next year you'll have a different teacher. So chances are that teacher could be different, maybe better than the last teacher. You're not with you're the same teacher for your entire, first 13 years of education, but you're with your parents for that whole time, at least I hope. I mean, that's kind of the way things are supposed to be. Anyway, so but administrators, no one ever talks about this kind of thing. Like, administrators, when they review data with teachers, they don't really talk about the parental involvement or lack thereof, right? They look at the data and they say, well, teachers, what could you be doing better to improve our data? And they never really consider the possibility that maybe the answer to that question is nothing. There's nothing the teacher could be doing better. The teacher is already just doing fine in many cases, not all of them, but in many cases the teacher is doing just fine. And maybe, just maybe, hard work was never reinforced by that child's parents. Again, no one talks about this, right? Instead, they'd rather you, the teacher, internalize all of that failure and question your own techniques and your own work ethic. And that's exactly what happened to me, right? I saw my students failing. To me, that was my own failure. Their failure was my failure. And teachers, let me tell you, that's not the case, okay? Just because your kids failed doesn't mean that you are a failure, because there are so many factors that will influence that child's performance on his tests or her tests that are simply beyond your control, okay? So just put that notion to bed, no matter how many times you hear it. Your failure, or their failures are not your failures. Period. The end. End of discussion. And, typically, you can usually see when the teacher's doing a good job and the students aren't in the data itself. Like, the data kind of speaks for itself sometimes. Usually you'll see what's called a bimodal distribution. So instead of the average bell curve where, the largest amount of students are in the middle doing average, you'll see two bells in the curve, two peaks. So there'll be a big peak in the D to F range because maybe, this happens a lot. The majority of the students in your class, especially if you're teaching intensive reading or something like that, the majority of the students in your class, they don't really have values. They don't, or I'm not going to say they don't have values. That's a little strong, but they don't value education. And in some circles, and I don't want to be labeled a racist or anything, but I think this is sort of prevalent in the black community. Academic success is considered weakness, right? So if you're good, if you make good grades, that's not cool, right? And I think that's particularly the case among black folks. I mean, please, I'm totally not trying to be racist here, but I mean, we have to be able to acknowledge problems without being called a racist, right? I mean, if there's a problem that needs to be addressed and someone's trying to look at it and maybe propose an idea to go about fixing it. You know, how are they going to do that if every time they bring it up, you know, you just slap a label on them and say, you're a racist? So, but it happens, you know, regardless of skin color. Like, this happens a lot in low-income areas, right? Academic achievement is frowned upon socially, okay? Now, luckily, I grew up in a small town where, you know, I could appeal to this, you know, I was pretty athletic. I could appeal to the, you know, sports kind of people, but I was also a cerebral stud. I mean, not really, but I performed well. Like, I did what I was told. I did my work. I got very, very good grades. I graduated, you know, 9th in a class of like 209, I think, individuals, you know, top 5%, you know, just, I was an all-around good student, right? I had a sense of value for that. And so, again, back to this bimodal distribution. I'm really getting off topic. So again, you'll have like 2 peaks, right? You'll have a large peak in the D to F range, and then you'll have like a smaller one, a smaller local maximum in the A to B range. And so those are the students who, you know, actually they're intelligent, and they, you know, they actually value their education and take it seriously. And that's how they were, mostly because that's how they were taught by their parents, and they also hang out with other peers who have the same sort of values, okay? So if you see a bimodal distribution, if you're a teacher and you see 2 peaks, 2 humps in your data, in your grade distribution, either one of 2 things. Either you're doing a good job and some of your kids just care and some don't, or there might be some cheating going on. A bimodal distribution is a common indicator that some students are cheating. So if you see that, just, you know, try to keep a closer eye on the kids as they're taking their test. Okay, so another thing that might like anger people, like, I don't want to start a war or get people angry, but we need to acknowledge that some children are simply not very intelligent. Okay, there, I said it. That might make you angry, but your anger should be directed at Mother Nature, not me. I mean, she's pretty brutal, isn't she? And I mean, and this is backed up in data. Like, most scientists in the field of genetics, they agree and they are convinced that there does exist a genetic component to intelligence. They don't understand it very well, and it's probably caused by a variety of factors, just kind of intertwined with one another. But it's pretty much a scientific consensus that there, you know, in at least some way, intelligence is inherited, you know, and passed down genetically from parent to child, okay? And now, again, it's not the only factor that will cause a child to be successful. There's also just, you know, hard work and values and stuff like that, but it does exist, and I think we should acknowledge that, you know? And even, like, outside of that, there's also kids who are smart, but they just don't perform well in school, okay? They're smart, they're very intelligent, right? They're very bright kids. They just don't, they're not compatible with, you know, sitting down and reading a textbook and doing the whole school thing, right? Some kids just simply don't have a learning style that's compatible with school, you know, and others do, you know. Luckily, I had a learning style that was compatible with school, but there were other kids just as intelligent as me who simply didn't, and they were set up to fail. So hey, let's take those unintelligent kids and those kids who are just incompatible with classrooms, and we'll just convince them to go to college, right? That's another big theme in public education today, to make everybody college ready, right? Sending these kids to college and expecting their intelligence to improve is almost like sending a bunch of amputees to a soccer field and expecting them to grow legs, okay? Because all soccer players have 2 legs, right? So they'll grow legs if we send them to a soccer field, right? I mean, in many ways, a child's IQ is pretty much fixed by his mid-teens, and it's usually not going to improve if you send them to college. Instead, what's likely to happen is the young adult now, it's not even a kid anymore, after you send him to college, he becomes a young adult, he's most likely going to fail, and he's going to have nothing to show for it but a huge mountain of debt, and tack on the opportunity cost of 1 to 3 years worth of wages and workplace skills that weren't acquired at school, okay? Now, this is quite evident when you consider the U.S. Census Bureau study, and this reads, quote, in 2010, only 62.1% of U.S. college graduates had a job that even required a college degree, and just 27.3% of college grads had a job that was related to their major at all. So you're talking about, you know, 62.1%. That's a huge number just 5 years ago. more than half of college grads end up in a job that doesn't require a college degree. But they still have all that debt, right? And that's a result of just convincing people who honestly don't belong in college to go to college. And this also adversely affects the young adults who actually belong in college, and it does so in three ways. First of all, the increase in demand for college. So the more students you get excited and convinced that they need to go to college, the higher the demand, while assuming a relatively stable supply, is going to drive tuition prices up. I mean, this is simple laws of supply and demand that are in play here, okay? Also, secondly, when you send a bunch of unintelligent people, as nice and hardworking as they might be, again, I'm not trying to insult them, but if you send a bunch of unintelligent people to college, then the curriculum is going to become less challenging and less stimulating to accommodate these less intelligent people. And it's going to frustrate and sort of, hinder the progress of the people who actually belong in college, all right? And finally, when universities just churn out more and more college degrees, each individual degree becomes just a little less valuable. It's basically the inflation of credentials is what's going on, and it's not right. There's nothing wrong with not going to college. If you're a student and you're watching this, let me tell you, there's nothing wrong with not going to college. By the time you're 17 and you're applying for college, I mean, not to offend you, but you know very little about what you want to do with your life, right? Because nobody ever really has these in-depth conversations with you. Nobody has these in-depth discussions. Instead, they're just showing you this scale and they're doing this learning goal and this, nobody's saying like, hey, what do you want? Do you want to go to college? They just say, oh, you're going to college, right? Yeah, I mean, that's the right thing to do. You're college bound. You need to be going to college. It's the right thing to do. If you don't, you're a loser. And I'm sorry, but that's not right. And these studies have suggested that. So take that however you want to take it. Now let's talk about something a little different, and that is the educational system's rampant obsession with technology. So like for any new teacher or somebody if you're a prospective teacher, like you want to become a teacher one day, one of the big questions that can make or break your interview is, how do you plan to incorporate technology into your instruction? And while I don't really know the cause of this big push for technology, what I can tell you is that in my experience, technology is considered wonderful and carries no negative consequences whatsoever. So as a teacher, any technology training went on and on and on about the benefits of a particular device or a particular app, but none of these trainings ever said anything about how to prevent the misuse of technology. It's like they act as if misuse of technology doesn't exist, right? And here's my take on this. So I think technology will only improve a child's education to the extent that the child's ability to use that technology responsibly will improve. Again, I'll repeat that. Technology will only improve a child's education to the extent that the child's ability to use it responsibly will improve. So in my generation, I'll give you an example. In my generation, the most popular portable device was the Game Boy. You remember the little Game Boy? If you're my age, you know it. Everybody had a Game Boy. If someone approached me at, 12, 13, 15, 17 years old and said, hey Ben, I'm going to give you a Game Boy, but this Game Boy has a 9.7-inch touchscreen. You no longer have to buy games. You can just get them online and just download them straight to your device in seconds for free. Okay, well, the price you pay is, you have to put up with an advertisement here and there, but they're still largely free. By the way, there's a wonderful app called Kik, which allows you to instant message your classmates and talk crap about the teacher right in front of her without her even knowing. But there's also a few educational apps, and I'd really like you to use those. I mean, of course I would goof off with that technology. It's too much for me to handle. Of course I would goof off, right? And I was a pretty decent student. But it was too much for me to handle. It's too much for most of these students to handle, because even as responsible as they might be, they're still children. They're still going to like games, right? They're still going to like their Angry Birds or their Candy Crush or whatever the hell they're playing nowadays. It's always different. It's always something different. My first year teaching, it was like Flappy Bird, right? There was like a Flappy Bird just epidemic in my classes, where I would just see the kids tap, 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 aw, tap, 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 aw. And, and I'm up there talk about like balancing equations and stuff like that, and everybody's just tap, 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 tap. I mean, it's, anyway. But it doesn't take more than just a little bit of thought to realize that technology is doing a lot more harm than good in a lot of ways. I mean, it helps some things. I'm not going to just knock it entirely. I mean, it has some benefits, but the idea that we need to equip every single student with with an iPad is just preposterous. It is a terrible idea, right? At least in my opinion, okay? Because, a textbooks can be pretty fragile. I mean, if you cram a bunch of work into the spine of a textbook, it can break. But at least you don't have to charge a textbook every night before you go to bed. And yes, like these students, a lot of them, like they want the students to be able to take their iPads home with them. And I taught in a magnet program where students actually took their iPads home with them. I mean, you know how many cracked screens I saw? Because their dog chewed it up, or just they dropped it or whatever. It's like they just cannot handle that kind of delicate technology. They're not ready yet. Now this leads me to another important topic, and that is discipline. So once upon a time, you used to be able to take toys away from students if they were playing with them in class instead of paying attention to the lesson. Not anymore, at least not in my old school, because, quote, like the phone is all these kids have. I mean, it's how they stay in touch with their parents. I mean, we can't disrupt the communication with their parents. Blah, 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 blah. What a load of crap. I mean, why can't the parent call the school? I mean, that's how it's supposed to be done. And it isn't just phones. Teachers at my school are also prohibited from taking headphones away. Headphones. Tell me how a pair of headphones is going to help that kid communicate with his parents. I mean, you can't take any of their personal property away. You can't do it anymore. Even though they're on school grounds, even though that just by being on school grounds, you consent to a search. Like you can't refuse like a police search or something like that if you're on school grounds. But now the students all of a sudden have these personal property rights where they can just keep their headphones around their neck and on their ears, blaring music that everybody in the room, even in the room next to you, can hear. Headphones, And by the way, it's truly wonderful that so many of these teenagers have an iPhone 6 and a pair of these Beats by Dr. Dre headphones, but somehow can't afford breakfast and lunch. I mean, excellent priorities, parents. Way to go, right? Well, Ben, you just don't understand poverty. Well, you know what? I did not come from poverty, but I also have never jumped instantaneously from one energy level to another, but I understand electrons pretty well, okay? I mean, this comes down to poor choices, period, all right? It doesn't take a brain the size of Massachusetts to prioritize food over leisure, okay? You're talking about sustenance. You're talking about stuff that you would die without. And you can't afford that, but you can afford iPhone, Beats headphones. The list goes on and on. But I digress. Back to discipline. So you can't take toys away anymore. And in my old district, due dates are a thing of the past, right? So in my district, you are told, or at least at my school, you are told to accept late work no matter how late and award full credit on it. And and that's all the way up until the end of the quarter, right? And the quarters are each 9 weeks long, okay? This is bullshit for many reasons. Most importantly, the student gets no lesson on the importance of being on time when you allow this crazy late work. I mean, personally, this is my personal opinion as a teacher or as a former teacher, but personally, I would rather an assignment gets turned in a little bit late, but it's complete and they gave like 100% effort, than to be turned in on time but incomplete, right? So obviously I'd rather it be on time and complete. But if there's like the choice between something that's all the way done but it's just like a day or two late, and in between that and something that's on time but it's like half done, I'd rather take the late paper that they actually spent, they spent the time and actually gave effort on. That's just me personally, okay? But we're not talking about a couple of days late here. I mean, we're talking about things that are turned in like 8 weeks late, okay? I mean, what motivation does a student have to do his work right now when he could just hang out and goof off with his friends who are already in the class and just do the work at home later on where his friends aren't going to be there? I mean, it kind of takes away, or not kind of, it totally takes away leverage from the teacher when, you can't say, hey, you really need to do this work now. Well, screw you, I can do it whenever I want, and you have to take it. And kids they're aware of policies. They're not dumb. They know how to manipulate and game the system. Let's say you're a teacher and you collect, grade, and return an assignment with detailed corrections for wrong answers. Now it's open season for students who have not yet submitted that work to just copy off of the student who has those corrections in his hand, okay? And you're not dumb. You know which ones are copying and which ones aren't. You know something is up when a student who pays no attention at all in class can suddenly calculate the temperature change of a 5-gram piece of aluminum that absorbs 3 kilojoules of heat. They've been copying because the system allows people to turn in work anytime they want. And finally, with this policy, teachers are just inevitably going to be inundated with sky-high stacks of half-assed paperwork just mere hours before their grades are due. Every quarter, every time. It's going to happen because there's no incentive for the kids to actually turn in their work when it's supposed to be due. Another policy in some districts, including the one in which I taught, was that teachers are prohibited from awarding any grade below 50%. Yes, even if a student writes, "I hate you, stupid face," folds the paper into an airplane and stabs you in the eye with it in lieu of actually doing the assignment, you must award him a 50, not a 0. Now the idea behind this policy is that a 0 hurts a student's grade more than an A helps his grade. And so too many zeros given too early will result in a steep uphill battle for a child who is already unmotivated, right? I understand that, but I still disagree with it for 2 reasons. For one, there is nothing in life that will give you 50% of a reward for doing 0% of the effort. Nothing, right? I mean, in real life, sometimes you give 100% effort and you still aren't guaranteed the best outcome. That's life, right? So we're not really preparing the kids for adult life. Also, children need to understand that their actions as adults are going to have permanent, irreversible consequences, okay? A grade point average that's damaged early on by a lack of motivation is still a very soft landing. I mean, it's not like the kid is having his electricity turned off. He's not, being evicted from his house or going to jail for tax evasion. No, I mean, these are the consequences of real adulthood. But just poor grades, that's your consequence, and it's a valuable lesson, okay? Maybe his GPA upon graduating high school is going to suck, but at least he learned that there's no going back. You can't change the past. Your actions are permanent and irreversible. Not learning that lesson anymore. Not when he just gets a 50, half the reward for doing 0 effort. So that's my opinion. So this whole accept all the late work and nothing below a 50. I mean, what these really are just ways for administrators to inflate grades, right? So they're a way to allow students to get a reward for something that they didn't truly earn, okay? And it makes sense, I mean, because the administrators need better numbers, they need better stats, because that gives them more money. That's right, better school grades equals more money. I mean, what a broken system, right? So we really can't put all the blame on administration, because you need money. You need money to hire teachers, you need money to pay for resources, supplies, and technology, and all this stuff, right? So without the money, you can't teach. But then in order to get that money, you have to inflate grades and kind of ruin the merits of teaching. So it's kind of like this paradox, Also, remember when a teacher had enough authority to remove a disruptive child from the class? That is also a thing of the past, at least at this school. Nowadays, you have to document every instance of wrongdoing, beginning with a verbal warning, to a student-teacher conference, to a parent phone call, to an after-school detention, and then finally, you can send that student to a dean with a referral. The dean will not accept any students that don't have a referral. Maybe that's changed, I hope so. But let me give you a story. So once I had a table of 4 students who, all 4 of them, despite being asked repeatedly to stop talking, continue talking during my lecture, just talk during my lecture. Eventually, I got fed up and just told them to leave. They asked me, "Hey, where do we go?" And I said, "I don't care. Anywhere but here. Go to Albuquerque, New Mexico." I don't care. I care about the students who want to learn, not you 4. And I know I sound cold and all that, but, whatever. Have your opinions, I don't care. So about 5 minutes later, I get a call from the dean telling me to allow these students back into class because they don't have referrals. Yep. These students have to violate school policy on 5 separate occasions and disrupt class 5 separate times And that's along with the teacher actually burning up the time to document all of these instances of wrongdoing in order for me to remove them from the class for one day. So like discipline, it's kind of hard for a teacher to want to enforce discipline when just the enforcement of the discipline is so hard. They have to do all this documentation and they have to, and the kid's just going to come back the next day. Why bother? So I've gone on and on about my own personal anecdotes, anecdote after anecdote, my own story, blah, 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 blah. Maybe it's just, just my case and it's not really a reflection of the society as a whole. So now let's look at some real facts, right? So on September 6, 2013, the Huffington Post reported that the U.S. literacy rate has not changed over the previous 10 years. And it says just 2 years ago, 32 million adult Americans couldn't read. That's 14% of the population, and 21% of U.S. adults couldn't read above a 5th grade level. And I forget what the Huffington Post cited. I think they cited the Bureau of Education Statistics or something like that. If you just go to the link that I'm going to provide below, you can read this article. But anyway, so yes, okay, so you have 32 million Americans, that's 14% of our population, of our adult population, can't read. 20% of adults can't read above a 5th grade level, and 19% of high school graduates could not read. High school graduates cannot read. They graduated high school, right? They have that diploma. They put on their cap and gown and walked across that stage and shook the principal's hand. But somewhere along those 13 years of public education, no one ever really got through to them how to read. Hopefully, in the last 2 years since 2013 when this study was conducted, things have improved, but I'm not going to hold my breath on that one. I wouldn't. Okay, here's the second fact. The inflation-adjusted cost per student of a complete K-12 education has risen dramatically from just north of $55,000 per student in 1970 to roughly $165,000 in 2010. So from 1970 to 2010, that's 40 years, the cost per student has more than tripled. Or no, it's tripled. Or it's risen dramatically, right? I'm not that good with numbers off the top of my head. Give me a calculator and I can just bang out calculations quick, but mental math is always a struggle for me. Anyway, so we are spending more money on education without seeing a remotely proportional improvement in literacy. This would never fly in the private sector. I mean, if you're like a stockbroker and you're in charge of managing people's money and you fail to give your customer a return on his investment, what happens to you? What do you think happens? Well, you get canned. You get the boot, right? But never going to happen with these people who are in charge of public education because it's just a big bureaucratic hierarchy. You can't blame anybody. Everybody just defers their responsibility to, oh, I'm sorry, but I'm just following orders. So I know what you're probably thinking, and it's, well, Ben, you haven't offered any solutions. What would you do to solve these problems if you had all this authority? You big hotshot you? Well, sadly, I don't think that there are any outright solutions. I mean, but we can mitigate the problem, but it has to be done on a local level, okay? We can't just march to Washington and just bring the whole system down, okay? It's too big, it's too intricate, it is too powerful. We can't just bring the system down. We can't fight City Hall. Writing to congressmen, writing to your superintendent is very likely to produce any valuable results. It's just going to be a waste of your time, most likely, but hey, I'd love it if you could prove me wrong. Personally, I think you're more likely to punch out God than to write a congressman and then he actually listens to you, but whatever. So let's approach these solutions on a local level, from the administrators down to the teachers, down to the parents and the students, starting with administrators. So administrators, principals and assistant principals, listen up, I am talking to you. If you have good teachers, leave them alone. Leave them alone, I'm serious. Remember that whole video? Leave Brittany alone. Yeah, leave your teachers alone. The good ones. Leave the good teachers alone. I understand that you have pressure from the next level up on the food chain, and I don't know what it's like to do your job, but whenever possible, please try your best to just let the good teachers do their thing. Think of it like this. If you're walking down the street and you hear Jimi Hendrix in his garage working on what's eventually going to be the opening riff of Voodoo Child, Are you going to say like, hey Jimmy, I think you're a really talented musician and I have so much respect for you, but I think you should do this, this, and this. I'm going to force it on you. No, you're not going to do that because it's Jimi Hendrix, right? He's great. You're going to be like, dude, just keep killing it, man. Do what you do, man. You're tearing it up. Keep on keeping on, right? Again, for the teachers that you know in your heart as an administrator are doing a good job, they're responsible, they're talented, they're motivated, they work hard, please, whenever possible, just leave them alone. They know what they're doing. Teachers, now I'm talking to you, teachers. Here's my advice. Live a double life at work. Go to your meetings, pretend to be interested in whatever these instructional coaches are spoon-feeding you. Nod your head and say, yeah, that's a good idea. Yeah. Oh, wow. Oh, yeah, I'm going to do that. Lie to them. Just lie. And then when you go back to your classroom, shut the door and do what you know is right for your kids. Nobody knows your class better than you do. You're probably, you're one of the few that know all of those students by name. But if you're not a great teacher, like if you really are struggling with something, then admit that you need help in that area and go out and seek help. Like, don't wait for help to come to you in the form of a meeting, because usually like the problems that most teachers face are like classroom management, discipline related. So if you're having an issue in one of these areas, don't be afraid or discouraged to go out and actually try to get some help with those things. And do it from other teachers, because they're going to know like the best way to do it in today's world. Like, administrators know very little about what it means to be a teacher today, because back when they taught, they didn't have all this forced compliance that teachers have to face today. I mean, hell, I just quit teaching recently, and I probably know very little about what it's going to be like to teach in the 2015-2016 school year. It just changes so much. It's so dynamic, and that's kind of hard. Like, you want to get used to your job, you want to get accustomed and have this experience under your belt, but it's very hard when all these rules and forced actions are forced on you every single year. It's all these new stuff, right? So again, live a double life, but admit when you actually legitimately need help on any particular area. Parents, now I'm talking to you, the parents. Challenge your children. Okay, your child's school is not providing the level of academic rigor and discipline that is necessary for your child to succeed into adulthood. Okay, they are not challenging your student enough. Okay. Now, if you can't afford to send your kids to private school, or you just don't have the time to teach them yourself in homeschool, then I understand. You should be able to send them to a public school, and they should be able to get a halfway decent education, but they're not getting it, okay? They might have some good teachers that have a positive impact on them, but those are the ones that are just breaking rules and living double lives, like I mentioned earlier. So have your own expectations for your kids. Look at their homework, and if it doesn't look challenging enough, give them some more complicated problems. Give them, have higher expectations. Force them to volunteer. That'll look good on their college application, right? Because they're just simply not being prepared by the system. They're not. And also, be skeptical of a child's report card. So if your child brings back like straight A's, be skeptical about that. Yes, you want to be proud of them and love them unconditionally, but chances are that straight A report card is what your generation would deem very average work, not A-level superior work. The standards have declined. And if you have a problem with a teacher, like you're kind of like upset at something a teacher did, or a technique that the teacher used, or a grade, like a grade that your child received on an assignment, please just understand that like teachers have a lot on their plate. Not only do they have a lot on their plate, but a lot of what they do is compulsory. Like, they're being forced to do it. So don't put all of the blame on the teacher, because it's really not all the teacher's fault. Most of the time. Like, most of the time that teacher is getting pressure from just all around. And as a parent, I'm asking you nicely, like, please don't just be another source of pressure, for the teachers. Try to work with them. Like, try to be on the same team with a common goal, working in the best interest of your child, please. And finally, students, children, teenagers, I am talking to you. Work hard. study hard. Do not just do the minimum amount of work necessary to receive an A, because this is not enough to do well when you grow up. It's not, okay? You have to go way above and beyond the ridiculously low expectations of your school, okay? If you don't do that, then you're not going to be prepared for college, if that's what you want to do. You're not going to be prepared for the workforce. You're not going to be prepared to, balance your checkbook and make sure you're on top of your bills and your rent and take care of, if you get a dog or like a pet, you're not going to be prepared for that. You're not going to be prepared to, take the dog out and take him to get his flea and heartworm medication and make sure he's got food and all that stuff. And you're not going to be prepared to raise a family either, So you have to go above and beyond. And if your parents aren't challenging you enough, challenge yourself. Demand high expectations for yourself. Always ask the teacher for more work. And I know that you're going to lose some social points for asking your teachers for more work. I mean, that's got to be looked at as like, wow, nerd alert. But let me tell you something. High school is very short-lived, and what comes after high school is going to last you your entire life. So high school is nothing like adulthood. It's just completely turned upside down, where the brainiacs and the nerds and the people who were not successful in high school become very successful in adulthood. So work hard, study hard. So that's pretty much all I have to say right now. I mean, there are other things to talk about, like standardized testing, but as I see it, we don't really have to discuss those things. I mean, if you want to, we can, but I think I've sort of, I hope I've shed some light on, what it means to be in a public school, whether it's, from a teaching perspective, that's mostly what I talked about, but also, it has implications on the kids and their parents and society as a whole, right? Because that's really all a school is. It's just kind of like foreshadowing of what's going to become the adult population. It's just a reflection of the surrounding society. If the surrounding society is screwed up, then the school is going to be screwed up, okay? And the way to improve it is to let talented, hardworking, motivated people do their thing, and then try to, in the best way that you can, try to phase out the ones that aren't so talented and motivated and just want to cash their checks. Because those exist, and I'm not disputing that. They do exist. And the unions do a very good job of protecting these deadbeats from getting fired. And that's not, I'm not defending the unions here. The unions have, I've never been a union member, and they do good things like provide liability insurance. So like if a kid lights his face on fire with a Bunsen burner, I'm covered for that if I'm a union member. But they also, protect bad teachers from losing their jobs, and that's not right. So, let's go back to, oh, and by the way, if you have anything that challenges anything I said, please, leave a comment, post a video, send me a link. I want to read it. If there's something that challenges anything that I've been saying, if something appears to be going in the other direction, if it's getting better, let me know, because I really do want things to improve. I don't want to just see the whole system collapse on itself and say, ha ha, look who told you so, ha. No, I don't want that to happen. I really do want what's best for the kids. I mean, I was a good teacher. And I'm not being arrogant, I'm just being honest. I was a good teacher. I communicated well. We had fun and interesting labs, fun and interesting demonstrations. I even wrote and performed a song with my guitar about thermochemistry, and I'll provide a link for that down there as well. If you're a former student of mine and you happen to be out there watching this, and you were a good student, not a bad student, because the bad students of mine, if you're watching this, you know who you are, and you know what? I'm happy that I don't have to see you anymore. I mean, the adults are probably watching like, wow, this is a childish guy. Like, why did he become a teacher, right, if he's so bitter about it? No, I'm not bitter. I just, I just don't appreciate kids who intentionally try to make my professional life a living hell. So to you guys, I'm not sorry at all for leaving. But for those of you who are the good students, listen to me. I am truly sorry. I'm very sorry. I'm sorry that I abandoned you. And some of you I didn't really say goodbye to. Some of you I left without saying goodbye. And the reason why is because I wanted to keep my departure under wraps. I didn't want my current students figuring it out and goofing off or doing whatever chaos, like, oh, he's going to leave in a couple of days, so we can just do whatever we want. I didn't want that to happen. And so that's why I didn't tell you, and I'm truly sorry. I miss you. I miss you guys. I mean, look at this. You see that? A student painted this for me using watercolors. I mean, wow. Even in the midst of all this wackadoodle nonsense of public education, teachers still have those good moments with those good-hearted students. Moments that you cannot experience anywhere else. And if you're a good teacher, and this is the most important message, if you're a good teacher and you know in your heart you're a good teacher, and if you ever feel like you're just spinning your wheels, you don't matter, you're not accomplishing anything, you're not making a difference, well, let me tell you right now, you really are. You really are making a difference, okay? I'm not asking you to quit your jobs. My goal is to just raise awareness and to shed some light on why so many of us who have left, why we left. Those of us who left did not leave because we're not smart. We did not leave because we're not motivated. We did not leave because we're not cut out to teach children. We left because we could no longer handle the abuse of this highly inefficient, corrupt system any longer. Thank you for watching, and have a good one.